Hi, thanks for joining me. So, I had an interesting question thrown at me by a guide on Saturday evening. Quite often, happens when that feeling when you're kind of drifting to sleep, but you're not fully in a deep sleep. So, if someone sort of opened the door or turned a light on, you would be startled. You're not quite fully asleep yet. I was in that sort of space, and I was thinking about during the day, I had stumbled across a video. It was Daryl Anker, I think his name is, who channels Bashar. He's like a bald guy that, he just shuts his eyes and channels these messages. So what got me thinking was he does a lot of audience participation speaking, and this lady had got up and asked him some questions. And his response, as he had his eyes closed and he was channeling Bashar, the response was, you give all your messages to yourself from your higher self. It's not coming from a guide, it's coming from a higher self. And it really got me thinking, because then I thought, well, then you're not channeling Bashar, you're channeling your higher self. So why have you given your higher self a name? And see, I have a lot of difficulty with a lot of people that do channeling when they close their eyes and then so this is, if I'm doing a video with you and I've got my higher self is starting to give me some messages to share with you, or there's another being up there, you'll often see me do this when I'm talking. When I'm stopping and I'm pausing and I'm thinking, I will go up that way, or it's usually up that way, and I'm waiting for the next piece of information. That's a form of channeling. But you don't see that. You just see Vicky is talking to you. So if I suddenly closed my eyes and said that I had, and gave a name and said that I had somebody coming through me, are you going to believe it more because it's coming from something else rather than coming from Vicky? It's a believable thing. And I can see a lot of people that claim to do channeling, they're just acting. They are channeling, but they're not channeling. It's not a being inside them. It's not another soul that has stepped into their body. Because if my soul steps out of my body and another one steps in, they would have the power to make my voice go into a man's voice. My face features would change. Everything about me would change. But when it's just still me I can make my own voice change. I could close my eyes, change my voice into something else so that you believe that I'm channeling something else. And the whole time it's just, as Bashar even said, it's just messages coming from your own higher self. So as I'm laying there Saturday night thinking, are they really channeling? Are they just acting? Are they trying to convince people? Is it their own higher self that they're recalling information that they already knew? I mean, it's valuable information. I'm not knocking the information, but why all the theatrics? Why all the trying to convince people that they are channeling why can't I just sit here and say, my higher self holds this information, and when I went through a near-death experience, I was given a whole lot more information, and that's what I'm sharing with you. Is it more unbelievable to have it spoken to you that way, that if I said, okay, it's coming from a different source, it's coming from an alien from another planet, or I could use a word like a Palladian or an Arcturian, or, like the words that are getting thrown around at the moment, they're just copied words. They are just copied words. No one even mentioned anything about those words 30, 40 years ago. So as I'm laying there with this question, I hear this voice say, now this is a voice that I felt like came from somewhere else. I don't feel like it came from my higher self. The question was, so what is the name of your soul? And I immediately grabbed my phone to write it down, because I'm not forgetting this one. I grabbed my phone to write it down. And then I woke up early in the morning and I was laying there. I grabbed my phone and I looked at the question again. What is the name of your soul? And I thought, well, yeah, because in this lifetime, my name is Vicky. You label me as Vicky. My parents called me Vicky. I go by that name for all references so that I have an identity and people call me that by that name. But that's my human self. That's my human self being labelled. But I have this higher self. Now, is this higher self also Vicky? So if this higher self, this soul, is also called Vicky, when I return back to the origin of the energy that I broke away from to come into this life, how can I also be Vicky in that life? Because that life has lived 10, 20 other lives. And I've had I haven't been Vicky in every single life. Or have I? Was I Vicky in 1313? But then when I was a boy, I wouldn't have been called Vicky. When I went back through past life regression, I saw myself as a young boy who had no shoes, who wore short grey shorts everywhere, and I used to steal apples. I could just visualise. I went through a hypnosis session and I saw myself stealing apples because I think we were pretty poor and in need of food. I wouldn't have been Vicky in that life. So I didn't see, this is interesting because when I went through my past life regressions, I didn't focus on what my name was in those lifetimes. So I can't be Vicky. My soul cannot be called Vicky. Does my soul have a name? So when my soul goes back, how does the other souls know who I am? And this is what I learnt when I went through my near-death experience. When I had left my body and that spiritual entity had come to take me down that passageway, when I looked across and I saw everybody I had ever known in this lifetime that had passed, I didn't yell out their names. I didn't go, oh, Mum, oh, Peter, oh, Bev, like Leanne. I didn't call out their names because they weren't the same people as they were here. They were energy, but I knew the connection they had to me. I knew that soul there was the soul that played the role of my mother in this life. But on the other side, she wasn't my mother. My best friend wasn't my best friend, but I knew the role that she played here in this lifetime. And there were souls there that I also knew were from previous lives that I had lived. But there wasn't any names. Even the spiritual entity that came towards me, he didn't come and say, oh, hi, I'm, come up with some weird name like Arcturia, like he didn't come with, or I'm Joseph, or there was nothing. I just knew that I had to go with him because there was this trust and faith. It was a telepathic communication, but we didn't have to have names. And also I know that we go to the level of whatever level my higher consciousness is at, whatever level I have, whatever level of understanding, is what I communicate with from the other realms, the other dimensions. So I think this is the way I've sort of tried to work it all out. Hang on. It's just someone trying to ring me. I think because of the dimension, I know where information comes from, and I know it's not, I'm past the channeling thing. I'm past the channeling. That to me is not what I'm supposed to be doing or what I'm supposed to be teaching. So I'm just drawing in entities that will help me. That's on my level of understanding. So someone else that's on a lower level of understanding or is just starting out or believes in a certain belief system, they are going to draw in information that equates to them. And that's why you find when you're on this journey of spirituality, you sort of get drawn to certain people to listen to, right? You think, right, I am at this certain understanding. I have a certain belief system. I want to understand it more. So you will draw in an entity or connect in with your higher self with the information that is at your level, what equates to you. And you grow through that, and you'll notice yourself what you used to believe. You used to believe certain things, and then it doesn't, you pass that belief. You go past the belief and you form a new belief, which comes with a higher level of understanding. And you can see it all over with these spiritual people that are online now. You can see that the level that they're at and what they are bringing in. There's one that just sits on TikTok and does lives all the time, and she uses a pack of cards, and she equates to whatever she feels like the card means to that person. And sometimes she pulls in, so she might say, oh, okay, I've got somebody here who had a heart attack, and they smell like a certain smell, or they've got a suitcase with them, so they used to travel a lot. And that's like, the person will go, yeah, that was my grandma, oh, you've picked up on my grandma. So for the person that's needing that information, it's great for them, and for the person giving it, it's great for them. They've found each other. And then you can move up to another way of doing reads. Personally, I don't want to tell people stuff they already know. Like, I don't feel like that's of any use. Why would I want to tell you what you already know? I want to tell you stuff you don't know. I want to tell you stuff that's still coming. That's why I've always focused on like what's ahead, because that's just the way I want to work. So I work with those on the other side that want to work on that same level. And a lot of it comes from my own higher self. And there's something in there. There's just this memory in there. And you tap into it, like the question, so what is your soul called? It really made me think deeply. Well, my soul doesn't have a name. My body here has a name, but my soul doesn't have a name. We don't need names on the other side. And as one lovely lady said, maybe we communicate through colour, through sound, through frequency, which is exactly right. We know, we just know. Like me being next to that doctor in my near-death experience, me being next to the doctor that I never met before in my life, but I knew everything about him. That's an energy exchange. But I didn't have to name him. Like, so when he finally dies and his soul leaves, there'll be a point in the afterlife where we will connect again, and I'll just know that he was there to help save me in that life without a name. So when people are channeling, or when people are saying, my guide has this name, I've questioned that as well. And I feel like the guides will sometimes say, here's a name to shut us up. Here's a name to make us believe that it's somebody else. Because if you all knew it was just your higher self giving you all the answers, would you believe it? Isn't it easier to trust that Archangel Michael is coming through, or somebody that's of a higher, but isn't it easier for your human brain to trust in that it's coming from something else than it could be coming from your own higher self? So do they, and I've questioned this, are you guys just humoring us and just giving us a name to basically say, because we want a name, because that's the way the human ego brain works. Give me a name and then I'll trust that it's something else coming through. And why, because I've said to you, I've never labelled my guide's name. I've never had a name. I just know them. I've had different ones come and go. I have never needed to name them. Yet I've known other spiritual workers that they have to give them a name. And it's for their benefit. In a way, they feel extra special if they've got a name or it's coming from an outside source. So when you're watching people doing channeling, just look at it more open-mindedly. Is it coming from their higher self? Are they just giving you a name so that you believe them? Are they closing their eyes and putting on more of a performance so that you believe them? Are they convincing themselves by closing their eyes and speaking? Is it a way of convincing their own self that this is not them talking, it's coming from somewhere else? Lots of questions to ask yourself. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll return that phone call.